Hello friends, welcome to the Southern Mountain Kitchen. Today we're going to make beef and noodles. So what you see on my counter is what we're going to use to make this whole recipe, and it's really just the easiest thing to make. But if you like beef and noodles, this is a lot faster take on it than some recipes I've seen. Literally, you're just going to hit this, cook it up, be done, and have an amazing meal that you could serve like with a salad and some bread and have plenty for whatever, because there's quite a lot of this that you're going to make up. There's enough to feed a family here, but it has such a great taste to it. It's amazing that it's as easy as it is to make this. So if you want something that really doesn't take a lot of effort and you like beef and noodles, this is it. So we're going to start off with about a half of a medium onion, and we're going to cut this into small pieces because we want to have it to a point where it'll work its way in with the noodles and with the beef, but not be huge, because we don't really want large pieces, because one, sometimes they don't cook up well, but two, you just kind of want them to blend in with the whole thing. So we're going to cut this pretty thin. We just want to make sure that we don't have any enormous pieces. Now, as you're cutting up your onion, you want to pay attention to the fact if any of it's really sticking together, because we want this to cook evenly. So we want to break up all the pieces before they hit a pan to be cooked, just for the sake of it's easier to do it before it hits the pan. So go ahead, slice this up really thin, and by the time you get done with this, we'll move on to the next step, because we're going to fix our noodles first and set them to the side until the rest of this is done. So just make sure your onions are really chopped up and that they are separated, and then we'll move on to the next step. But for the next step, you are going to need a large pot, and what we're going to do is fill it about halfway with water, then add some salt and oil to this. It's your choice how much you want to add in there, because we're going to get this heated up, and when we come back to it in just a couple minutes, when it's hot and boiling, we're going to add our egg noodles to it. So go ahead and let it get hot. If you have to put a lid on, do that, which is what I did. And you can use 2 cups of egg noodles, and you can use whatever type you please to use on this, but you're going to follow the directions on the box for how long to cook them, just to make sure that they get cooked. Mine said about 9 minutes. Some of them say different. So we're just going to go ahead and cook these up. Once they're done, take them to the sink, pour out the hot water, put the lid back on them, and let them sit and wait until we move on to the step of kneading them, which is going to be a few minutes down the road, but they'll be fine sitting there until we get to that point. So in a large skillet over medium-high heat, we're going to put a pound of ground beef in, and we're going to start breaking this up, because we really want to actually get this down to little pieces, because we're not going for large hunks of meat in this. We're not going for anything that's like meatball sized pieces. We want small broken up ground beef. And as you cook this along the way, if it actually gets really greasy, you can subtract some of that out before we go on to anything else in the recipe. Now, you have your onions already cut up, add them to the skillet, and we're going to cook these for a time until you get browned off ground beef and you get your onions cooked. So keep mixing these through, move them around, and let that beef start to brown. But make sure you keep yours on medium-high heat to get this up to temperature of what we want this to do. So move this around as you're going. We want to make sure the onions actually hit the bottom of the pan and they actually get what they need to do this. Now along the way, we're going to add some seasoning. We have a half a teaspoon of salt and a half a teaspoon of pepper. And we want to get that all over top of the beef, and then go ahead and mix this through. And we're going to cook this anywhere from, I don't know, 5 to 7 minutes or so until that beef is brown. So make sure that when you're doing this, you don't have a lot of pink left in the pan when you get to the point where we're ready to move on to the next step. So as you can see, mine is browned up really nicely. Pretty much it's to a point where we want it to be. Now we're going to add some minced garlic to this, and we're going to use 1.5 teaspoons. And we're going to cook this for just a few seconds to actually get it cooked through. You don't want to cook this for a very long time, because after a minute, if it's just sitting in one place, it's going to start to scorch and it's going to get a really bad taste. So we really don't want that. But we want to move it around and get it a little bit cooked. And as this is keeping going here, we're going to add 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. And then after that, we're going to add a half a teaspoon of Italian seasoning to it. And then we want to mix this through to get these flavors all through the beef, so everything is kind of benefiting from what we just put in. And we're just going to keep watching this and moving it around, making sure there's no pink in it as we're moving it, because we want the beef actually cooked before we do anything else to this. So stir yours up, make sure it's moving around. And when you get to this point right now, you can actually reduce your heat down to just straight up medium, because once the ground beef is cooked, that was mainly what we wanted that for. So go ahead and keep mixing it through. And then after we get to a point where we see that everything is really cooked and all of the ground beef is broken up into small pieces the size we want it, we're going to add 1/4 cup of flour to this. We're using all-purpose flour, but the point being is this is what's going to help make the gravy that's going to go through the beef and the noodles when we add them back to it. So just get your 1/4 cup of flour, sprinkle it over the top, and we're going to cook this for the 2 minutes we need to get rid of the taste of flour. Because if you don't cook it for that full 2 minutes, you will taste your flour and it's not going to be a nice experience. So once this is in, mix it all through, and it's going to start actually clinging to your beef, and that's really what you want it to do. So you just want to make sure that we get this completely through there, all mixed up, all clinging together, and pretty soon you're not going to see the flour anymore, but your beef is going to have a little bit of a tint to it. That's what you're going for. So we want to make sure that we do this completely, but for at least 2 minutes. And once this is all fixed and done and we got all of this the way we want it, pretty soon we're going to bring in some beef broth. So you're going to have to get that ready. You need at least 2 cups. So we want to make sure that, all of this is mixed through, that you don't see any flour sticking around anywhere before we add the beef broth to this. And when you're ready, just go ahead and pour it in over top. And then what we're going to do is mix this through what's already there. But we're going to cook it for about 5 minutes to actually get this mixed in with what's already in the skillet, but also to create a gravy that's going to start to thicken at that point. Now, the good thing is once the beef broth hits this, you literally are to a point where there's not much else to do this other than bring in your egg noodles. So, once you're ready, go ahead and add that in, and then we'll move forward to the next step. Now, there's nothing special about this beef broth. It's just straight up the kind you get right off the shelf. There's no additives, there's no flavor, there's just beef broth in this container. And stir it through. Now, while this is cooking for the next 5 minutes or so, you want to stir this occasionally to get this all mixed in. But as it heats up, it's going to start to thicken, and as you can see in mine, it's forming a gravy. That's what you want to see. So once you get it to the point where it's starting to thicken and you can see that it's really thickened a lot, you're going to add in your egg noodles, which you had sitting to the side, because we're going to put them in and actually incorporate them to this, but we're going to get them really coated. We want them to have this gravy all over them as well as the beef and everything else. So go ahead and bring them back in, and once you get them in here, we're going to let this simmer for at least maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes, just so the noodles have the chance to take on the flavor of the gravy and the beef. Really, it's not going to be a hard process for them to do. You just got to mix them in and break them up. They may stick together a little bit because they've been sitting in the pot, but it will start to separate as soon as you get this gravy all over them. So keep mixing it through. Make sure that all of it gets coated, because that's the flavor right there. We want it all over those noodles. Now, one thing about this, you want to serve it hot. You don't want this sitting around for a half an hour before you serve it, because it may actually thicken up too much at that point. We don't really want that. But once it's mixed through, you can just basically serve this straight out. One thing I think is really great with this is if you want to serve like a salad and some bread, like even if you had something like garlic bread or whatever, it would work with this, because it has such a great taste to work between all of these things. And you have your meal right there. This is just like an easy dinner, especially if you have a really busy work night where you really just got home and you're trying to throw something together really fast that isn't going to take forever to make. This is one of those things, and it has the best taste. And the great thing is, this is a crowd pleaser, because if somebody likes beef, they're going to love this. And this is the way mine looked on my plate, and it had the most amazing taste. So I think you just might like this one. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe. And if you get a chance, check out the Southern Mountain Kitchen website, where you can get a free recipe, check out the cookbooks available from the Southern Mountain Kitchen, and if you'd like to, you could order a cookbook at a discounted price, cheaper than Amazon, with shipping that is also cheaper than Amazon. So if you get a chance, check it out, and I hope you have a great day.